goal of this next project is to modify this Harbor Freight flashlight to run off of an AC adapter and extend the button about 2 feet away from the unit itself. The reason we're doing this is because my dad has a Mark V diving helmet mounted on the wall in his VA room. We'd like to shine the light up into the helmet itself so that the light comes out of the sides and the front. The way we're going to go about this is we're going to modify the flashlight so that on one side it has a 3.5mm headphone jack that connects to the wall, and we're going to extend the button about maybe 2 feet away from the unit itself. The power adapter is 4.5 volts. I want to use the LEDs coming off of the top, and we're going to use this 3.5mm jack from Radio Shack and this push button switch in this project enclosure to house the button itself. First, we're going to need to examine the AC adapter. We want it to be 4.5 volts. Next, we're going to have to take it apart. It's held together by one Phillips head screw and 2 little tabs at the bottom that we'll have to bend. After we've bent the tabs, the front of the housing should slide off, and then we have access to the circuit board and we can pull it out. First, we're going to have to see what wire connects to what part on the circuit board. Let's grab our multimeter and send it to continuity mode. We're just going to touch any point on the actual connector itself, and then touch where the wires connect to the circuit board to see where it shorts. We'll do this with both points just to be safe. Once we figure out where the power and the ground points are, we're going to add a little bit of solder to these old solder points to help us reflow it. To remove the wires, I'm just going to heat up the solder, and then once it's liquefied, I'm going to pull the wire out. Do this on both ends. I need to wire up the headphone jack in such a way that the tip is the power and the sleeve will be ground. That way we can use any 3.5mm plug when we want to use this. We're going to connect the power wire to the bottom left part of the headphone jack. This is going to be power that will go to the tip of the actual plug. The ground wire is going to be the one at the top, which will connect to the sleeve. These are the only two we're going to use, so don't worry about the other one. We can just leave it. We're going to have to modify the housing slightly to accommodate the 3.5mm jack. Here I'm using a box knife. I wouldn't recommend using this, perhaps a Dremel or a drill. I just didn't have mine with me at the time. Once it's slightly bigger, it should fit right in there pretty decently. However, we're still going to have to hot glue it down. Now we're going to connect the jack to the board itself. I've already marked on the left side where the power goes, so we'll solder this wire to that pin and then the ground wire to the other one. Now this should give us power when we plug it into the wall. I don't have the whole thing screwed together yet, but it's always a good idea to test to see if it works. I finally have the hole mounted, and we're going to plug it into the wall and plug the cable in and see if we can get any voltage readings off of our multimeter with it. So this time we're going to have our multimeter set to read voltage. And then we're just going to touch the 2 prongs, hopefully the black one to the sleeve and the red one to the tip. If we get a positive voltage, we'll know we did it right. So now we can finally take apart the light itself. We're going to have to remove these stickers so that the top housing can come off easier later on. You can slice it or remove them. The unit's held together with 3 Phillips head screws on the back. After we take those out, the bottom half of the housing will come off and we can remove the 3 AAA batteries. 4 more Phillips head screws to take out, and then we can take off the top part of the housing. The final two screws actually hold the circuit board into the unit itself. Remove those and now we can examine the board. This thing is actually surprisingly simple. There's no circuits or ICs or anything, just traces. We have all our LEDs hooked up in parallel, and when we connect the power and ground, everything will light up. So the red here is voltage and the black is ground. We're just going to have to connect the red and the black. Now at this time the batteries in my camera died, so I missed a lot of stuff unfortunately, but I'll go through kind of what I did off camera. I actually used one of the red buttons from a broken NES Advantage that I took apart a long time ago. I drilled a hole in the project enclosure and milled it out big enough so that the button can slide in and out freely. I also soldered the wires up to the tack switch on a piece of perf board. Right now we're going to test that it works. If you hook up the alligator clips to the wires and the prongs on the multimeter, we can see that when you press the button it shorts out, which is what we want. I mounted the button on the back part of the project enclosure because it had just enough space to fit in there. I ended up hot gluing everything together, including the button, onto the switch itself. After drilling the final hole in the housing and slipping the wires through, all we need to do is solder both wires onto the board itself. It doesn't matter what wire goes where, as long as both wires are attached to the board itself at the points that we need to connect to turn it on. Same as before. To do this, we're just going to solder it on, touch both parts until the solder melts, and then it connects. So now it's time to do one more test to make sure everything still works. We're going to plug the power cord into the unit, and then we're just going to press a button, and if it lights up, it's all working. I just put a little bit of hot glue at the hole where the button wires come in to help keep it kind of in place if we move it around. You don't need too much though, so be kind of conservative. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to sand this little piece of plastic to kind of make a diffuser panel that will make the light, diffuse out and make it appear brighter. I'm just taking the light grit sandpaper and scratching it up until it's nice and foggy. Then I'll cut it out and then tape it to the top when we close everything together. Alright, now it's time to put the whole thing back together. You just need the two screws that hold down the circuit board onto the housing. It's going to be a little bit of a tight fit because of the wires we added, but it's not going to be a problem. Secure the board down, and then we're going to put the top housing on. You'll notice that we took the original button out because we won't need it anymore. We're not going to put batteries in this either because we don't want to overload the LEDs and explode them. Once everything's put back together, we can run one final test, and then we'll give it to my dad. You can see the power LED on the AC adapter light up. We have the cable plugged into it, so now we're going to plug the other end of the cable into the light itself that I have magnetized to my fridge. We'll hit the lights, cross our fingers, and it works. This thing puts out a hell of a lot of light too, so I think this is going to work really well. So here's the final product. We have it mounted underneath the helmet. I built a little stand for it too. And as you can see, hitting the button turns it on and off. I imagine the effect is a lot more pronounced at nighttime, but you can clearly see here on the green side that it does work really well. Thank you for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Take care.